In this video, you're going to learn how to use Google Forms, some reasons why you might want to use Google Forms for your class assignments or class assessments. One thing is they're self-grading. If you use the multiple choice option, Google will grade them for you. You are able to insert questions that are short answer that you will have to evaluate, but pretty much they are self-grading. You can create forms that adapt to your students. So let's say that you have a student who did not perform well on a question. You can actually set it up so that the student is sent to either a resource or a different type of question based on how they perform on a question. You can include things like images, videos. You can include links. If the student, like I said, gets a question wrong, you can send them links and resources for remediation. And all of your feedback is kept in a spreadsheet, so you can keep it all in one place so you can look back to it for each assignment. The types of questions that you have in a form, and I'm just going to show you how to create the form first, and then we'll look at the types of questions. There are two different ways that you can create a Google form. One, you can create it ahead of time in your Google Drive. The other, you can create it in your classroom as you're creating your assignment. I'm just going to start from creating in my Google Drive. I'm going to go to New, and then Google Form. When I do that, it takes me to an untitled form. First thing I would do is give it a title. So let's say this is a studies assignment. So the types of questions that you have are over here. Now I will say that it will, if you start typing your question, if Google can tell what type of question it is, they will automatically default to that type of question. But you do have your different types of questions over here. And when I mean questions, I mean questions that you would use in an assignment, or possibly questions or resources you might use in a survey, such as date and time and things like that. So you have short answer. Short answer is just a few words that you want the student to put in there, up to like a sentence. Paragraph, if you want the student to write more than that. You have multiple choice. You can, I don't think there's a limit to how many choices you can have, but just remember that the difference in multiple choice and checkbox, multiple choice, there's only one correct answer. Checkboxes, there can be multiple correct answers. Drop down, where the student will select an answer from a drop-down box. You can ask the students to upload a file. So this might be something you would use when you're creating, let's say, a survey. A linear scale. So if you wanted to create a form for you to use to evaluate your students during class, you might use a linear scale to say, yes, they were prepared, all the way to no, they were not prepared today. Multiple choice grid, where you can have multiple choices. A checkbox grid, it's very similar to a checkbox. And then date and time. So when you create your Google form, like I said, give it a title, description. You do not have to give it a description, but you can. And then it automatically gives you a spot for your first question. So let's say my first question is, and it automatically realizes that this is a multiple choice question. If for some reason it's wrong and I want them to, let's say, type it in, I can change that. And then I have my options. So I'm going to type in my options. So let's say I want an other. So you might not use this on this type of question specifically, but let's say if you are surveying your students and you want them to check all of the applicable things that they believe are important, and they might want to put something in that's not already listed. You would click on other. This creates a box for them to type in, and they can type in another answer. If you need to delete an answer, you just press this remove. You will notice next to your question and next to your answers, you can add pictures. In order to do that, if you want to add a picture to your question, you're just going to click on that icon. You can upload one from your Google Drive or from your computer, or you can search, you can Google search. So if this question is about the United States, I might want to put a picture of the United States and then insert, and it's there for you. There are some situations where you might need to put pictures for your answers. So for example, if your question is, which one of these photos shows the first president of the United States, then you would not have an image for the question, but you would have an image for the answer. And it's the same exact thing. You would just type in the different photos or images that you want and then insert them right there. Down here, there's a couple things that you can do. You can duplicate a question. So if you want to duplicate a question, let's say there's a question that's very similar, you can duplicate it, and then you can change whatever you need on that question. There is delete. So if you decide you don't want this question anymore. Required. The reason why you would press required is if you want the student to not be able to go on without answering this question. I use these a lot in surveys. So for example, on a survey, sometimes people don't realize they didn't put their name on it. If I put, what is your name? And then it's a short answer, they have to put their name if I put that it's required. Another way to create a form is to go into Google Classroom and create a quiz. So you would go to your classwork tab, and then you would go to create. And there's two different ways that you can create the form. That would be straight from your Google Drive or from this right here, a quiz assignment. The difference between an assignment and a quiz assignment is a quiz assignment automatically, and I'll move this over, has a Google form attached. It is a blank Google form, but it is a Google form. So if I click on this blank quiz, it's going to bring up my Google form. And so let's say I have the same question. Okay, so I have my answers. Now, what I want to do is I want to fill in my answer key. This is how Google Forms is going to know what the correct answer is. So I'm going to I'm going to choose the correct answer. And I'm going to say this is worth 1 point. I can also put in answer feedback. Answer feedback for the incorrect answers. So let's say I can put nice try, but review this. Let's say I'm going to add a video to help you answer the question. Okay, and then I'm going to go to a YouTube video, and I'm just going to search right here. And I'm going to stick a video in there. So let's say all of these are for the capitals of the states. So let's say this one probably wouldn't be the best resource, but just for time's sake, I'm going to stick this one in there. So when the student answers an incorrect answer, they're going to get this right here, and they're going to be given a resource. You can also send them to a link. Maybe you have an activity that you found online for whatever that topic is. So you can send them to those two types of resources. For correct answers, I'm going to put good job. I'm going to save. Now you'll see I have my correct answer, and then my feedback is going to be different depending on whether they get it correct or incorrect. So now you can go in as a student and you can preview what your quiz looks like so far. If you go to this little eyeball, that's the preview. And let's say I'm going to select the wrong answer, submit my quiz. Now when the student goes in to view their score, it's not only going to tell them that they got a question wrong, but it's also going to say, nice try, but review this video to help you answer the question. So they will be able to view the video, and they'll get that immediate feedback for something that they got wrong on the quiz. If you have it set up so that the student can do the test again or do the assignment again, then they would go in after having that review, they can go in and answer the question again. A couple other things, this is how you would add a question. You can import a question that you've created previously. You can add a title and description. Like I said, you can add an image. You can add a video. So you can have the students view a video and then answer a question based on that video. And you can also add sections. To add a section, you just press this button right here, and it creates this second section right here. When you do that, you need to tell the program where you want the student to go after section 1. Do you want them to go to section 2, or do you want them to submit the form? You can move your section, you can duplicate your section, and then you can delete your section. Once your students have completed your quiz, there's a couple different ways that you can look at their responses. If you are looking at their responses from your Google Drive, from Forms, you can go to the Responses tab. And when you get to the Responses tab, it'll give you a couple options. So you can have a summary of the entire quiz. So it will be by question. So you have, now I only had one question and I only had 3 times I only submitted the answer. So it's going to look a little bit different. But if you look right here, so it tells you the frequently missed questions that with a less than 50% correct response rate. And it tells you what the question is, and then actually you can open up the question. And you can see what the answer that was most selected that is incorrect. You can also break it down by question. And because I only have one question, it's going to be 1 of 1. So the question is, what is the capital of the United States? And then it tells me how many responses that I got for that question and how many students selected the incorrect answer for that question. You can also do it by individual. So this would show you each student's quiz. So this is student number 1. This is what they answered. Then you would go to number 2, student number 2. So you can see their whole entire quiz. You also can go up to the icon for Google Sheets. And you can click on, the first time it's going to ask you, do you want to create a new spreadsheet or do you want to use an existing spreadsheet? First time, you want it to go to a new spreadsheet, create, and it's going to open up a new spreadsheet, and it's going to have the students listed, and then it'll also have their answer to that question. So each question is going to be right here. Obviously, it doesn't have a lot on there because I only had one question, but you would have more data if you had more questions and more students. You can also, if you are going to send this out in Classroom, you can see the students' responses in Classroom. So I already created my quiz. It's attached. I'm going to send it to all of my students, and then I'm going to assign. Now I can see it in my classwork. 0 of 2 students. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my test student. So now I can show you what it looks like as a student. So my student has logged in. They went to their classwork and they went to the social studies assignment. They click on their quiz. They're going to answer. So I'm going to have it so the answer is correct. Submit. Now, when the student views their score, they're going to see that feedback that we gave them. You could attach something else to it. You could also give them an extension activity based on how well they did on each question or on the quiz. That's up to you. So now the student has completed the assignment, and I'm going to go back to my assignment. Now, to see how my students do in their quiz, I'm going to click on my quiz, and I'm going to go to my edit menu down here. It'll take me to where I created my quiz. Now I can go to the same section that I talked about before, the responses section. I can see the summary, I can see by question, and I can see my individual students. And don't forget, you do have that spreadsheet where you can see all of your students and their answers to the particular questions. A couple things to keep in mind on using Google Forms. You can customize your theme. You can put a header up there. You can change the colors and the background colors, font style, things like that. Remember, the preview button is the button that shows you what your form is going to look like for your students. You have a couple settings in here. You most likely will want to collect emails. That just means that if a student fills out the form or the quiz, it will automatically collect their email. That means that you will know exactly who created or who finished that assignment. You can decide, do you want to restrict it to only Cape Fear Academy? That would be for mostly for surveys. You can limit to one response. You can have it so that your respondents can edit after submit. These are all typically for using it for surveys. Presentation, do you want to show a progress bar? Do you want to shuffle the question order? So if you want each student to have a different question in a different spot, you can do that. You can change your confirmation message. So for quizzes, you can turn on this locked mode, but that's only going to work on the school managed Chromebooks. Also, do you want it to immediately give your students a score, or do you want it to happen later? Do you want them to see missed questions, correct answers, and point values? Those are all settings that you need to pay attention to. Let's say you are creating a survey, even an assignment, but you're not using Classroom. You would send it by clicking the send button. There's a couple ways to send it. One, you can send it to an email. Two, you can send a link. I typically shorten it and then just copy this link and send it out to your students or your families, however you're doing it. And then you also can do an embedded HTML. If you have any other questions about using Google Forms in your classrooms, just put in a help desk ticket and I will help you out.